Hi there! I'm here to chat with you today about Bill 15, more affectionately known as the Choice in Education Act. This bill was passed incognito in the middle of a global pandemic, and it affirms that parents have the right to choose what kind of education they feel is best for their child. It supports the creation of new charter schools, including vocationally focused charter schools. It protects the status of independent private schools, and it provides new options for parents who are choosing to homeschool their children. Now, on the surface, I can understand why this bill feels like a step forward, especially when terminology like diversity and freedom and plurality and choice are used. I mean, I can also support those ideas, and I'm a lefty. In addition to those upstanding qualities, our premier is taking the long overdue step of enshrining Section 26 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights into our provincial laws. So it's easy to see how this bill could be a no-brainer, especially with the timing of its passing, since this bill speaks directly to the individuals who are fearful of infringement of their personal rights and the parents who are concerned about sending their children back to an underfunded public system with no health and safety measures in place for the upcoming school year. So now those Albertans have more options and more freedom to make educational decisions. Thumbs up for that, right? Wrong. So, to the untrained eye, or maybe just people who don't understand education, what this bill fails to recognize is that this will force a transition where parental choice will now supersede a child's right to receive a free and equitable education. This bill will prioritize the privatization of education in Alberta and contribute to the public sector's defunding. By deregulating charter and homeschooling programs, cognitive dissonance is removed from a child's learning experience, and there is no way to ensure that tolerance is being taught within our classrooms. So let's explore this topic a little more. A selling point of this bill was that it was the first of its kind in Canada to recognize Article 26 of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. Just pause for a second here and take a look at this video. So if you heard that correctly, he said Section 23, but as you can clearly see, it's Section 26. Our leaders, ladies and gentlemen. But let's get back on track. Undeniably, upholding the human rights is ethical, and the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights is an immensely influential document that has been prioritized in our legislative process in the past. For example, in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's Call to Action number 43. However, what Kenny and his UCP members failed to take into account is that directly above this article is directly below Section 3 is Section 2 of Article 26. So let's look at that. Right. So it states that education shall promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship among all nations, racial groups, and religious groups. This section is significant since the amendment to the Home Education Program, Section 20 of Bill 15, now allows for unsupervised, notification-only, non-funded home education programs. There is currently no way to adequately ensure that understanding, tolerance, and friendship are being prioritized by the untrained and unregulated parents who are now educating their children. Additionally, the UN Declaration of the Rights of the Child states in Article 12 that parties shall assure that to a child who is capable of forming his or her own views, the freedom to express those views freely in all matters that affect that child. So what that means is that child gets a say. And this section emphasizes how it's not just the parents' interests that need to be prioritized in Canada. By deregulating alternative education programs, we cannot guarantee that a child's interests are being prioritized or even acknowledged. The debate on whose interests should be prioritized in education was examined in the landmark case of Chamberlain versus the Surrey District School Board. In this case, Chamberlain, the plaintiff, a teacher, took the Surrey School District to court in order to include 3 books with the topic of same-sex parents in the public early childhood classroom. He claimed that the school board unreasonably refused to include these books. Chief Justice McLaughlin, speaking on the majority of the court, ruled that there are limits to the amount of control that a parent can exert on the curriculum. As stated, there is a limit to a parent's control over what is taught to their child, and upholding the curriculum must be paramount regardless of where that child is learning. So, it can be said that a child, the state, and a parent interests are usually in conflict with each other. Whose interests hold the most impact and which ones should be prioritized? In Clark's 2010 article, he explains that children themselves have an interest in minimal autonomy, an interest in becoming fully functioning adults. Now, these interests don't just disappear when the child is attending a private religious school. Children's interests in their education are distinct from their parents and their state. Yet, Bill 15 is pushing these educational interests further away from children and states and towards parental interest only. This is dangerous because parental figures already have immense influence over their child's values and belief systems. Education is designed to create opportunities that challenge preconceived notions that are instilled in children through cognitive dissidence. Exposure to cognitive dissidence is necessary if children are to be taught what tolerance actually involves. After all, ensuring that tolerance is being taught is part of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. Furthermore, this bill is working towards defunding public education and promoting unregulated private and charter schools in Canada. So, to quote Kenny himself, Alberta's public schools have been recognized internationally in the 80s and 90s. That was decades ago. And Alberta remains a world leader in school choice in Canada and the world. So, if we're such a leader, why do we have this bill? And my question is, what exactly is Kenny trying to fix? Now, this is where we look back at my favorite word of this bill, which is choice. What exactly does choice in education mean? And what is the reality of a privatized education system? In the document, we, the educators, the concept of privatization in Alberta is addressed, and the consequences of choice are examined. As quoted, choice is a concept that should not be confused with agency or opportunity. If human well-being were to be assessed on a person's choices, all must have equal choices. However, in the case of low-fee private schools, only the families with the means to pay the fees can enjoy this choice. As Kenny and his ministers argue, privatization promotes competition, improves quality of education, and creates better choice and access for parents and students. And it also takes the financial burden off the state and then places it on to families. But this also calls into question the extent to which the model actually improves educational access and outcomes. Promoting choice actually enhances segregation, and research shows that very little correlation between competition supported by privatized education and academic achievement. So, where are these benefits? After all, private interests take precedent over a student's interest in a privatized education model. So to summarize, Bill 15 is actually designed to redirect educational interests away from the child and towards the parents. They are deregulating alternative programs so cognitive dissonance and tolerance cannot be ensured in education. It is creating unequal access to quality education, and it is furthering the defunding of the public education system. Now, just to be clear, I do support parental involvement in school. Parents are a foundational aspect to a child's success in their educational pursuits. But what I don't condone is a hidden agenda that only serves the interests of the economy and not of the children, that works towards stripping equal access to education and removes regulations that ensure fair and equitable education. Further privatization of education will lead to the destabilization of our public system. It'll work towards creating gaps in the quality and accessibility of education for children of different financial situations and familial values. During the horrors that are happening in our world today and what is happening in our communities, I find it completely deplorable that Kenny would take the time and capitalize on the fear that Albertans are facing right now and mask it as a way to protect their rights and freedoms. So maybe this fall, Kenny, you should go back to school. Anyways, thank you for listening.